the focus for this is for us to use talking head content in a more engaging way. Most presenters, when they're building content for either learning or for promotional content or for marketing, for education or for entertainment, are not using talking head content in the way that it's supposed to be used. I've been a video strategist for about 7 Fortune 100 companies and a dozen Fortune 500 companies, and businesses large and small, helping them use video more effectively. And one of the ways that I found is really effective is when you are thinking of talking head content, it has got a very specific purpose, a very specific design. And that is, it is a surrogate, if you will, or a vehicle to connect with your audience on a human level. Much like we're doing now. The fact that I'm talking to you through a camera or through a screen does not diminish the authentic human experience that we're having. And so I think a lot of people, and I'm going to use the word learner and audience kind of interchangeably, but a lot of people who are building content for learners or audience members are trying to ask talking head content to do too much. But it has a great purpose, and so I want to cover kind of what that purpose is and why I think it's important. And I'll start by showing you a comparison to a client that came with dated talking head content and they wanted to upgrade it. So this is the piece that they had shared. This is what they currently had for their training program. And I just want to take a minute to really examine this and not to be, very critical of them as people or to, talk down about their efforts here. But what are we noticing about the issues with this kind of content? Not just the compressed grade, right? It looks like it was shot in an older camera, but what else is going on here that signals to us that we are at a disconnect with this speaker, this presenter?
Feels very distant, like he's
very distant. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A lot of clutter.
Yeah. Like it's almost like he's got a barrier literally between him and you, which is the desk and this, this water and stuff. There's a lot of clutter
in front of him.
Chair in front of him with his hands on it. It's very uncomfortable. Anything else?
Uncomfortable body positioning.
Body positioning.
He looks like he feels very awkward.
Yeah.
Very staged and not very authentic feeling. Feels like a sales pitch kind of already.
Yeah. Okay.
Also, just looks like random fluorescent lighting.
Yeah. So there's no intentionality behind what he's doing or why he's in front of you. And so I want to show you the comparison of what I produced for them is this. And I want to make a comment that while this looks very clean, this is good enough. And I'm not trying to be humble here in that talking down the quality here. I think that the goal of talking head content is to remove the camera from the conversation. Right. And so when we looked at the previous shot, it was very obvious that there were all these other elements that were interfering and were taking away our attention. And in this case, it's stripped all of that away. I wanted to focus on the speaker. I wanted him front and center, and I wanted a very intimate connection with this person. Some added benefits of the staging or the set design was to have a gray background because this was negotiation training. And so the theme there is that there is no black and white. It's just shades of gray. And so I'm able to very simply reinforce this narrative by design. Okay, but you'll notice, yes, he's much closer to camera. I'm not afraid to and there are shots of it that are very, very tight. And you'll notice even in my framing talking to you, it's very, very tight. And there are reasons for this, namely that the longer lens that you use increases the likability and memorability of a face. Dr. Yuri here is an authority in negotiation training. So we want to build credibility, and this is a really great way to do that. This lighting scheme is very simple. It's 3 lights, and we're going to talk about the 3-light process. But I just want to reinforce again that the point of doing talking head content is to have a human connection with your audience and to reduce the cognitive load, as we say, so that people can pay attention and engage better. Part of my job as a filmmaker is to attract attention, to engage emotions, and to ultimately help audience members change behavior. And they can't do that when they're distracted. They can't do that when they're overwhelmed by details. And we may not think of it as significant having a plant here or having some water on the table there, but the clutter adds to the amount of visual processing that we have to do. And we want to strip it away. So again, as you're thinking about this, don't make the camera a character. Remove the camera from the equation. This is a lens by which you see these people. Okay, so here's the agenda I want to go over real quick, and then we can talk about some things that you want to cover as well. So I'm going to go over some lighting hacks that'll really help polish, make it look more like Yuri's video, some quick editing tricks to keep your audience engaged, tips to feel natural while you're on camera, and then finally we're going to have like a little feedback set up. If you want to show me what you've got, again, there's no need for that. We can have follow-up calls about that. Any questions about the agenda?
No.
Good.
It's very straightforward.
All right, we'll have a little Q&A at the end. But the first thing I want to ask you is like, what are you struggling with when you think about talking head content? Where is the barrier for you?
Great, I'll begin. I make YouTube content. I have a microscope-based YouTube channel where I educate people on what microscopes to buy, et cetera, et cetera. I'm starting a new YouTube channel that is focused around ADHD sort of content, biohacking, productivity, that sort of sphere. And the thing that I had to benefit myself with before with the microscope stuff is that the B-roll could be center stage because it was just a very visual type of content. Whereas this new category, it's a lot more like ephemeral concepts that I can't just like point to a physical like microscope part and be like, oh yeah, here's the little doodad right there. And so I think that my B-roll needs to take a little bit more center stage. So I'm kind of new in this journey of how do I make B-roll really, or A-roll really stand out, be less cluttered, etc.
Great. Who else wants to go?
Well, talking head stuff mostly in my field, where we've been using it is in like the customer testimonials, and we were having initially similar problems where, you try to film these people in their homes or kind of like in environments that have like texture, but we find it all just to be a little overwhelming and distracting, like the focal points getting lost.
Yep.
So currently, like a current solve is just kind of like a soft background type of thing, with them there. But oftentimes too, where the vehicle is always like a part of the equation, right? So like at some point, like we're going like a little bit wider to incorporate at least like some part of the metal. So really just looking at more like simplified places to shoot, like bringing them to us and setting up a spot instead of going to them so much.
Yeah. Okay. So having a little mobile studio approach is something that you want to get help with. Okay. And then Stacy, what about you?
It applies to me as well, actually. That one about being
great.
mobile.
Wonderful. Let's get some water here.
I'm thinking about starting a YouTube channel, and I'm just feeling like a little overwhelmed by the idea of which equipment would I buy? How would I ensure the sound is good? Because when I'm watching a lot of YouTube videos, I can hardly stand to watch those that the sound is kind of echoey or quiet compared to other channels, those sorts of things. And also creating a setup that would, kind of be like, turn it on, push one button and we're ready to shoot. Versus, having to turn on 10 things, check levels, like do this every time. I want something that's very automated, and I just don't have any knowledge around equipment and the tech and all of that. So I'm feeling kind of like, uh-oh, how do I even get going here?
Yeah. Okay, well, great. These are all part of the presentation, so I'm glad that we're aligned and you're not in the wrong place. I guess I'll start with, we're just talking about lighting because, without light, we have no image. And I think there is an undue amount of pressure put on people to increase the lighting quality and all this stuff. And I just want to talk about some basic things here. So again, I'm a firm believer in making things simple. And as you start to work with more significant professionals in the industry, you realize how many corners they really cut. So I had the privilege of going out to the ASC Clubhouse, which is the American Society for Cinematographers. That's the equivalent of like a PhD program for video people. And I got to work with people who shot major productions, including Iron Man, Bruce and Evan Almighty, these like crazy movies that we think of like from the 90s on that were really big deals. The guy who I was working hands-on with, the dude who shot Mama, Guillermo del Toro film. And so one of the things I noticed about a lot of them is that they used a very simplified lighting approach. And that was really just to get the largest possible source they could, and then they would cut into it. And so when we're thinking about like what is an attractive look for a face, every face is different. So you're going to want to figure out what lighting works best for you. But on the spectrum, we have two different shades. We have hard and we have soft light. And all this means is that the light source that is hard is far away and at a small point, like think of the sun, and it casts a very sharp shadow. There's a very definitive line, as we can see the woman on the left. That nose line is very, very sharp. And then soft light is bouncing around, it's diffused, it's a large light source, and it is close. And so generally speaking, when I'm thinking of lighting, like right now, I'm at a pretty soft source. I have a giant window. This is just like my patio window that I have open. I'm using that light to help bounce around. It's also a cloudy day, which helps, but it softens my features and it makes blemishes less noticeable. It requires me to not have to use makeup, on-camera makeup. Like if I'm using hard light and I'm in a film, even as a man, right, I have to wear makeup and foundation to soften some of those features. Thinking of like your light source, you really just want to use what's available. One of the things that I will talk about often is principles of lighting, but I want to show you kind of two examples that will break down and talk about the lighting scheme so that you can kind of decide which one is best for you. This is a very quick promo video. I'm not going to show the whole thing. I just want to show you parts of it. So there's an interview here. This is for a steel manufacturing group.
It's not about one order.
These people have no on-camera experience, but this is a painting or a little art installation he has behind him. So this is just in an office. They have this thing hanging, and we know that it's got metal. So I'm using, again, 3 lights here, and I'm using 2 different angles for the camera. So I have this angle, and then I have this profile shot of him where he looks a lot more authoritative. Okay. And so all I'm doing here is I have 3 basic components. I have a main soft source of light. We can see the shadows are pretty soft right around his nose. I have a backlight to separate him from a dark background. And then I have a light literally shining right at the background. And depending on what the background is made of, it will create different kinds of experiences. It will add, what we call specularity, which is like little bright, shiny metal reflections. And so that can add visual interest, right? On the opposite wall, where we're doing the profile, again, just a third light. There's a small, very blanketed light on this dark wall to just create a little bit of boost so it's not pitch black. It's like a darker gray. But again, this light that's hitting him from the back of the head separates him from that dark background. So we're creating depth by using what they call the 3-point lighting system. It's 3 lights. It's a main light, it's a fill light, and it's a backlight or even a background light, depending on what you want to do, right? You can cut the background by separating it, or you can shine a light on the background to pull it out. And what I mean by that is that you either have light on dark or dark on light. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So because this guy's got a dark blazer, on a dark background, he's going to blend in and look like a floating head. But if I use my third light to strike that separation, now he pops out of that background. I don't even need to light the background on this one, right? I could just have it be a black background, but now he has depth because he's popped out from that. So that's the 3-point lighting. Key, main light, reflection or fill light, and then a backlight or separating light. I add the background because I'm saying that you could basically blow out the background. If I wanted to instead of using this as a rim light, I wanted just to make this white background, he would pop out and I wouldn't need to do that. But it adds more depth in this way. Okay, and the second lighting scheme I'm going to show you, which is very similar, is a video I did for a storytelling course I have. This series. I hope you've come away with some inspirational tools to help you hit the... Thank you for watching this series. I hope you've come away with some how many lights do you think are used in this lighting scheme?
1.
Looks like 1 to me as well.
Yeah. Would you need to add more lights? Do you object to this as a lighting scheme just because it's 1 light?
I don't.
Looks great, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to overcomplicate it.
Your background, the colors and stuff plays nicely to the darker clothes that you're wearing.
Yeah. And so it's a large enough source. It's actually like a China ball, which I'm going to recommend that if you're looking for lighting stuff, that's a really simple setup. Just have a China ball where you can, it's a very large, soft source. But you'll notice it like in the eyes in particular, one of the things that really helps connect people to their audience is that they have this thing called an eye light. And it's these 2 very like shiny, bright parts on the eye that reflect back. And it looks like people have like a light in their eyes because they physically do. But it's also that they seem more alive and engaged and bright. And so this is a really useful tool to focus on as you're thinking about your lighting setup for your face. Make sure there's a really strong highlight, which oftentimes is the main light that you're using, right? So if I have this China ball and I'm using this on my face, it's going to naturally, I'm at a 45-degree angle. That's how we're positioning this stuff. The main light is typically at a 45-degree angle from center, okay? So from off axis from the camera, 45 degrees, very simple. If the light source is large enough, it's going to fall off naturally. And it falls off naturally because of a thing called the inverse law for light. And you don't need to know these equations or anything. All it's saying is that as light goes further away, it falls off at a significant portion compared to the distance. And so it's going to have a very aesthetic, attractive look as the light has a fall off, a natural fall off. So you don't have to do too much, right? You don't want all the lights turned on in the house. You want a large source that will naturally fall off, like from a window, because it just looks better. I'm going to move this because this is basically like I'm using a giant grid, but you can see like it'll even still light the background more if I don't have these like things to cut off the shadows and to change it. I'm just focusing on a very large light source that's coming in. And if I do want to cut things down or I want to like sculpt it and make it look more contrasty or edgier, I can just add literally black sheets to block it. And that's all I need to do. So inverse light is just a natural phenomenon for light, but I mention it because, again, we don't have to overcomplicate these things. We're focusing on simplicity for the lighting. Another option is if you have a very bright source and it's not a cloudy day or you have a direct light, consider using something like wax paper to break that up and diffuse it. So you can literally just hang a piece of wax paper over a window and it's really, really quick. So Ryan, you were talking about going to these locations where you're in someone's home, and the easiest thing is just to be like, find the window, face them toward the window with your back to it. So you're shooting from the window's perspective, not into the window. Yeah. And then just cockeye it like 45 degrees. And then boom, now you have a beautiful soft light and it's quick and you don't have to do any, set up any lights. Super easy. Let's move on to lenses. Do you have any questions about the lighting aspect so far?
I do.
All good with me.
Yes, go ahead.
I noticed, when I used to film my own self-submit auditions for my acting work, if I was shooting in front of a window and I did have that nice diffused natural light, my skin looked really nice and I looked bright and all those things. However, if it either wasn't the right type of weather day or harsh light was coming through the window, or I might have even had to shoot at night to get the audition submitted in time, I would try to use my, they were lights that had like the umbrellas on them. And my gosh, talk about a difference. I mean, even if it were bright enough, it made my complexion look really uneven and I looked almost like sickly or dead. Any idea why that was happening?
Absolutely. So I'm going to show you a demo here. I want to move this. I'm going to cut the light out from the window that I had. Okay, so that's my window source. I'm going to plug in a light that is basically, it's the China ball, right? So now we're looking, I don't know if you guys can see this again. I now have this other light source that's hitting me from the opposite side. It's a certain kind of material that may or may not benefit me. And so I like this. I think this is pretty comparable, but likely what's happening is that the color temperature is not matched to what the camera is. And so when we talk about color temperature, there is a difference with the color of light that's emitted from a light bulb than what is emitted from outside light. And there are different degrees of this. So we have, for example, in broad daylight, like sun beaming down on you, you have what's called 5,500 degrees Kelvin. And Kelvin is nothing more than if you took a black object, a piece of metal or coal, and you heated it up to 5,500 degrees. The light that it looks like, the color it looks like, is what would be daylight outside, versus 3,200, which is the inside incandescent light bulb. And so that's an oranger, warmer light. And so cameras don't have the range of ability that our eyes do. And so it can only manage so many elements. It has to make a compromise. And so it can't take outside light and inside light and match them. Our brains naturally do it. We don't need to see blue light outside and warm light inside. We're just going to be like, it's light. It's general light. But computers and camera technology and even film technology can't do that. They're very limited. And so what might be happening with your complexion is that the color temperature is not set correctly, or it's at an auto setting and the light is throwing it off because it's not a true representation of that light. So when you buy LED lights, they come with a code that will basically tell you how off they are on their color trueness, their authenticity. You don't need to worry about any of that stuff. All you can do, you can start adding filters, or you can change the setting in your camera to make it warmer. If you have manual control, that's the best option. A great way to do this is you can buy a gray card. It's called a gray card from Mike's Camera or B&H or any of these like photo, video equipment distributors. They're like 10, 15 bucks. And if you're using an iPhone or something that has an auto setting, you literally put that in front of your face under those lighting conditions and hold the button on your phone or on your iPad, and it will lock it to that grayscale color. That will set the white balance for exactly what it is at that surface, at that gray surface. And so then you don't have to worry about it. You can take it away and it'll be exactly what the light is that's falling on your face. So just as an example, like we've got this like light source here. It works for a lot of things. That was what I shot with the TikTok video I just showed you. It works great when there's no other light source available and I can lock in. If I'm mixing sources, which it might also be a problem that you were experiencing, you had a light that you were using, but you also had other light that was interfering and influencing the camera. You want to be careful of that. All right, so let's talk about lenses real quick. The main thing I want you to know is that lenses are basically just allowing the amount of light in that you want to hit the sensor. And depending on what you choose, how much you choose, it has an impact of what is in focus and what is sharply rendered. That's it. The 5-second tutorial on photography is aperture if you want something out of focus or in focus, shutter speed if you want action covered, ISO depending on how sensitive you want your image to be. So meaning like if there's not a lot of available light, then I need the sensor to be more sensitive. And so I want a different ISO. But if I'm capturing sports and I want crisp, clean action because they're moving fast, or I want to blur somebody, make it look ethereal and mysterious, I want to control shutter speed. But if I want the subject to either be in focus, in isolation, or I want to see everything across the depth of the image, then I want to focus on aperture. And so all we're thinking of when we're talking about lenses is that they have these things called f-stops. And the numbers are very counterintuitive to people. So as the number gets larger, the whole opening, the aperture size gets smaller. All this means is the number corresponds to how many of those openings you can fit across the lens. So if I have an f2, technically I can fit 2 of those across the lens. If I have an f16, it means I can take 16 of those dots, those openings, and fit them across the lens. And so the higher the number, the more that is in focus, the more depth of field that I have, the more range of like things that are close to me to things that are far away that are going to be in focus. So if I want a blurry background, what number am I aiming for? Do I want a higher f-stop or a lower f-stop?
Lower.
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 The lower the number, the less that's in focus, the shallower the focus is going to be. Like you want to have, kind of an f2 to f4 range if you want a blurry background. And if you want things to be sharply in focus, then you want a higher number, f16s, right? f22. Knowing what that is, you can create what they call bokeh or other interesting effects that are blurry in the background by using a lower f-stop or a wider opening, right? So this effect is simply created by hanging Christmas lights, and it adds visual interest. But I could have shiny metal that is, I'm hitting it with a light or a lamp. So like if you want to add these little specular, sparkly images, just get some cheap Christmas lights and hang them in the background. If they're far away in the background or they're very, very close in the foreground, they're going to create this effect, this bokeh effect. And the bokeh, all it means is it's taking the shape of the aperture itself. I've seen effects where people create like a heart shape and they put it around the lens and then the light takes that shape. These little fractals would create a heart shape. And so you can get very, very creative with it. But you're adding visual interest because what this does is the eye for a viewer moves to the brightest part of an image. And that typically is the eyes. And so where you can kind of add a little bit of dressing, it makes it more interesting for people to look around and not be bored. And it's very cheap. All right, so we're going to summarize this. We're going to move on to some other elements here. But the basic summary is get the largest, softest source you can. That'll be flattering for you. China ball is really great. Or use a window that's available. If the window is very bright or you have harsh lighting, lay some wax paper or some diffuse paper over it to break up those light rays and make them scatter nice and softly on your face. You want to position it as close as you can. There is a point, obviously, where it's too much, but don't pull the light away if you want soft features. You want to get it close. Pulling it further away will make it harsher. If it gets too bright, you got to dial it down either in the camera or actually attenuate it on the light. You can buy dimmers that will lower the intensity of the light, or you can get adjustable lights like these LEDs that I've got, and they'll make it easier for you. And then again, use 3-point lighting to create depth. It's just the main, right? The fill. And when I talk about fill, I could use this as my second light, as my fill light. This is to me, a very bright and harsh look, but some people like this, you know? And then for the lens piece of it, I just want to talk about the summary here. Lower aperture means blurrier background. So the lower the number, the more open it is. Telephoto lenses, again, will reinforce that likability and memorability. So if you want to feel like you're having a more intimate connection with somebody, get your face closer and larger in the frame. It's linked with intimacy. When we're very close to people that we're intimate with, our attention spikes about 10%. And so this is one of those features that you're kind of hacking in the brain. And then finally, like, don't be afraid to decorate your background. I didn't do a phenomenal job of this, but with my bookshelf, it's color coordinated. It adds some visual interest. And so really take time once you got your lighting to say, what do I want to see more of in the background? What would be kind of interesting that's not too distracting? A lot of people use plants, but like, I've never seen a great instance of a plant being used in the background, unless it's small and it's like as part of a larger design.
I have a question on the topic
Yeah,
of
please.
telephoto lenses. So my understanding of this is that the focal distance of your camera, so the further away your camera is, and then of course, you know, you want to zoom in so that your face is cropped correctly,
Yes.
will change the shape of your face and the way that it
will.
looks, right?
Yes.
And that's my understanding of why like further away looks better, is because it actually just like looks closer to what the human eye typically sees, not through a camera. Is that correct?
So it's partially. So when I say it's memorable and likable, memorability is about just being present and dominating. So if I'm up close in your face, you're going to remember me more. It doesn't mean that you like me more, but the likability thing is really linked with attractiveness. And when you are farther away from someone and you're zoomed in, so what Sarush is saying is that basically, if I move the camera twice as far away and I use a lens that is twice as long, my actual framing will be identical, meaning like I won't be any larger or smaller in the frame. I'll be in the exact same position, but my face will be compressed. The background will be compressed, because that's what a telephoto lens does, is it takes all of that depth and it compresses it on top of itself. So things that are farther away look closer. So background images or background elements look closer. So when we see like these beautiful shots of mountains that look like they're right up on us, they're using a telephoto lens. They have a much larger surface for it, but they're using a very long lens. And when you use it on a face, it flattens the features and makes it more symmetrical. Most of us don't have symmetrical faces. And I would recommend you try this. Go to a window, like we're doing here, take a picture of yourself, and then turn around from the same place and take another picture, so you get the light going on two different sides of your face. We call it hatchet. The light would be exactly halfway and it would stop at your nose. So half lighting, and then you go around the other side and you get half lighting. And then examine the two different parts of your face, and you will notice that they are not symmetrical and they kind of indicate different things. One side of your face might look a little bit aloof or a little bit abrasive, and the other side might look really friendly and really approachable. And then you can actually kind of pick what face you want to show your audience based on that. But if you're using a telephoto lens and you can afford one and you've got one that works in your space, compressing that makes your face more symmetrical, and people tend to just like more attractive people. It makes you look a little more attractive. That helps.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I hadn't realized that the facial symmetry changes. I had assumed it was always just the like the roundness of your shape looks like more normal to a human eye when it's further away, something like that.
That's also true.
I guess,
Yeah,
is there a limit to how far away, like how much telephotoing you can do before, I guess, like it becomes weird, right? I mean, if you had like literally a telescope on a mountain, like at some point there's like a sweet spot there somewhere, right?
I mean, yeah, I don't think it would be anything that like you would notice. I think people would find it like an uncanny valley experience, where they'd be like, this face is too flat, like this is abnormal. If you had like a 1600 millimeter lens with a 2x expander, like, yeah, dude, that'd be so bizarre. You know, it's like 3,200 millimeters equivalent shot across, you know, I'm at on a mountain. That would look a little bit odd. But for the most part, you know, we're just trying to get a little bit flexible. I would say above 85. Like I'm shooting on an 85 millimeter right now, and it's about 6 feet away from me. So that's not a terrible, you know, lens. The camera I'm using is a full frame. So when you have a larger sensor, like think of in film formats, you got 35 millimeter, and then you go to medium format or large format. These are the 35 millimeters like this big, medium format's this big. So it's like a considerable size larger. The sensor is larger, and so you can use a more telephoto lens and get more of the background in the shot. So this gets into like talking about how we organize our images and how we tell a story visually that keeps people engaged. It's not just going to be the talking head, but we're going to have other elements in it. One of the most pivotal editing books I ever read was called In the Blink of an Eye. In it, he talks about how you can tell that a human being is done with a thought and has edited in their own mind when they blink. And so one of the things he started to do was he would actually edit when people would blink. That was a good point for him to cut, that they knew that they had the end of their thought. And so I would say the same thing I would use when you're creating content. When you blink, it's a good time to cut your videos. It's a great action point. Just sit with that for a minute. Like, you will watch stuff now and you'll be thinking about it for the rest of your life. It's one of those books. He has dozens of things like that in the book, but it really stood out to me as profound.
It's a super interesting insight, by the way. Yeah, definitely it's gonna blow my mind. I can guarantee it.
So as we're doing that, yeah, and so like, you know, and there's other elements that are involved in this, and I want to talk, you know, briefly about how we're dealing with sound editing and just not only the recording, but actually using it in the post-production process. So for the most part, like, I'm just going to summarize it as these three things. You're going to spend a lot more money in your sound equipment than anything else. Sound quality, if it is poor, it is absolutely unacceptable across the board. I don't care who you are. I can have a mediocre or even a bad video image, and people accept it. They will tolerate it. They will not accept garbling, hard to understand audio. Audio is one of the things that we developed first in the womb, our ability to understand and to discern sound, and it is native. In fact, they've done studies where they ask people, you know, would you be happier if you were blind or if you were deaf? And the majority of people think that they would be happier if they were deaf because they want to see. But the opposite is true. We function in our world completely immersed in our audio experience, and it keeps us safe. I remember watching one of the Sherlock movies with Robert Downey Jr. And I'm sitting in the theater, and there's a scene where he like sneaks up on Watson and he blows a dart and it hits him in the shoulder. And whoever designed the sound deserves more credit than they got for that movie, because I literally jolted when it flew by. I thought someone threw a baseball by my head, and I just missed it. It was so visceral that I physically jolted to get out of the way of it. And it was going from one back speaker to one front speaker, and it conveyed the sound, the depth for that. And just so it's very powerful. And a lot of video editors forget about it, because they think I've already talked and I already did what I need to do, so why do I need to worry about sound? We're going to talk about why that's important and how to do it. Some rules of thumb when you're recording: just limit the sound and noises, obviously unplug devices that are loud. And then I don't like the people that are like placing the microphones in their hands and they're talking on like a card or something. Just get a normal lav mic and clip it 6 inches from your mouth. That's it. There's no need to do all this other stuff. There are tools in some of your editing software, if you're using Premiere, that will clean up your audio and enhance your speech in a beautiful way. Audio now is like better than it's ever been, but you still need to get a good quality input in. So you want to have something that they can enhance, but just know that a lot of it is much better than it used to be. Now we're going to talk about like how you're reinforcing these actions and transitions in your edit itself using sound effects. I'm going to show this like little demo, and I want you to pay attention to the sound effects in my video. Here we go. Years ago, I had a client come to me with a change management program that they spent $1.1 million on, and it was a total failure. And the reason it was a failure is because the employees were not engaged. Think back to it. So that's it. That small little thing, you have this little change machine that they spent $1.1 million on, and it was a total failure. Okay, and the reason it was a failure is These kinds of things you add on and you stack throughout the entire video because it adds more interest, and you would never think of it as an audience member. It would go by you and you wouldn't think anything of it, but it adds a richness to it and it breaks up the boredom. It also, if you notice when the ching happened, the cha-ching, it was a good point for me to have, I just emphasized my point and then it had a pause and it was totally worthless. It set up an expectation and then I delivered a different punchline. And so again, this is a very, very like microscopic way for you to create impact without doing too much. These were two different sound effects. I found a money counting machine. It's not native to that image. I found that image, I used that image, and then I looked for the sound effect that would roughly correspond to it. So you're doing slightly extra work in that it wasn't just inherently there. I had to find it and build that. But I want you to start thinking about, how do you use sound to tell a story? And so when you do your video and you do your edit and you get it done, go through it again and be like, okay, what do I hear? Like eyes closed or a picture off, what do I hear? And where are there opportunities for me to reinforce these things? There's another one I did recently where I talked about people spinning their wheels. And I literally had a car drifting, and then I added a bunch of like squealing tires, brake noises, crashing noises, and it creates an impact. It's like, this is dangerous. And so you see an image of a F1 racer who's drifting. The assumption is not that they're going to crash, but if I put the sound in there, I'm now adding that association. So that clip that I had, my B-roll clip, now has new meaning that it didn't have when it just existed out of context. All we're doing here is adding more and more context. One of the ways you can add a lot of this stuff is you can go to a site like Artlist. They have both. They have footage, they have sound effects, they have music. They're great. They're like a one-stop shop. I'm not a partner with these guys. I'm not sure what their pricing looks like. I use different vendors, so I just have subscriptions to it. But it's something to consider if you want to add really high quality B-roll and you want the licensing to be kind of self-contained. I mean, you can also buy packages. People sell sound effects packages. I see them all the time on Instagram. They're advertised to me. You get a library of maybe 500 sounds, and you just go through and you use the ones that you think have impact. This can also be used for things like transitions, where you do like a wipe, right? Or a quick whip pan. What's really cool is I'm seeing technology now where it's kind of comical. There's a guy, he designed a fight scene from a famous movie. He watched the movie. It's like a Marvel film. And he's just going, and he's making these noises. And then the AI interprets his noise and gives him an approximate sound that he can fit in there. So if it's like as I'm punching, it'll be like punch noise, and it will add the actual thudding effects, which I think is insane. But it's so rapid now, like the cost of it, like there's no reason why you should not be getting involved in trying to make more audio content or adding that layer to your videos. All right, we're gonna keep going on here. Really cool editing trick. I don't know if you guys watch Kurosawa films. He's like the most known for it. Steven Spielberg does this a lot too. There's a thing called the axial cut. And all an axial cut is it's a punch in to a different shot. So there was a wide shot of here, and then we punch into a tight shot. And I wanted to show you like there's impact here because it not only adds visual interest, and you can do this with a zoom as well, but it also like gets you to focus on the thing that is important. So right now, this character comes out and he sees all of his men, all these different warring nations basically waiting for him. And so the impact of his reaction is really, really powerful. So the axial cut says, hey, here's where we are. Now I really want you to pay attention to this thing, which is very important, which is the reaction. And so if you're giving a talk and you're presenting your information and you want to really emphasize a specific aspect, like I had and it was completely worthless, that is an axial cut. I just punched in tighter on my face, or I zoomed in tighter. And so it creates emphasis for your content. And so using the axial cut is really great. You have to do a significant amount for it to not look like a break, like a jump cut. And it's usually, they say like if there's a 30% change, the brain accepts it as being okay. Meaning if I'm talking to you at this angle and all of a sudden I cut to an angle of me talking like this, it has to be 30% different. If it's slightly off, it'll look like a mistake. And the same thing of like, I'm here and I want to zoom in, I need to be about 30% difference. How you quantify that is not really relevant. It's just like a factoid for you to say like, hey, don't be ashamed to go, larger than you think you need to. And as you're doing that, I want to make one mention here. We talked about cognitive load. I will drag guides up on my videos when I'm doing them, and I will put them square in the center of my face and on my eye line, so that when I go from this angle to this angle, it is matched. Because if my eyes are at a different line and I'm watching the video and I have to move my eyes, you have cognitive load, you have a break. You want to have these breaks, or these what they call pattern interrupts, when you want to create more visual interest. If it's just conveying information and you're making me do work to consume your video, I'm going to lose interest immediately. And so you may not think of this as being very significant. It adds up. It can be very tiring. And you've probably seen videos like this where you've watched content and you go, man, it wasn't a lot, but it was exhausting watching it. It's because they're making your eyes move around the screen. It gets tiring. When we talk about cognitive load, all I'm really saying is that there are calories to be burned to understand things. And we want to remove cognitive load because we want to remove the barrier to understanding. It's very hard for the brain to say, this is worth my time to burn calories. It does not want to. That's why the only way for you to gain strength when you're in a weightlifting program is to go to complete failure. So the brain says, we almost died. It's worth investing some calories to build muscle. But building muscle is incredibly expensive. Learning is no different. You are building neuronal connections in much the same way as you're building muscle at the gym. And so if you want the brain to say this is worth it, you have to really give it a good incentive to waste those calories. And by doing kind of menial things like having them search around the screen, not helping you, not helping your cause. Any questions about this? Here's our summary for editing. All right, guys, we're wrapping up here soon. So edit when the speaker blinks, use axial cuts or zoom to keep visual interest, but match cuts so that the eyes align, and then reinforce what you want your audience to feel through B-roll. And this last point, I didn't really go in depth, but how do you pick the right kind of B-roll? And I would say to you that it is more important that you not go with what they literally see, and you focus more on what the feeling is of it. So even if an image is better to represent the actual thing I'm talking about, if it doesn't convey the feeling, that's secondary to me then. The literal representation is secondary to the feeling that I want my audience to have. And so this can be really freeing. Like if I'm talking to you about timeshares or passive revenue sources, and I'm trying to sell you a course, I'm going to talk about all the things that you associate with that, like long walks on the beach and like having a really posh house. I don't need to show you the actual funnels that you'll be building to make this passive revenue. Does that make sense? It's about the goals and aspirations that you want. All right, last thing we're going to talk about is how do you feel natural on camera? And I'm going to be really like concise here. We're just going to go right into the summary because it's not that complicated. But a lot of people are uncomfortable because they've not been on camera for a long time. They've not seen themselves from a third-party perspective or heard themselves. But the basic things that you're going to do are when you are talking, you are not going to edit yourself. You are going to practice dealing with the discomfort of making a mistake. You're going to sit there and you're going to say something and you're going to slow down so that you can talk in a way where your brain can catch up. It's a really, really important aspect here. Too often when people present, they present at too rapid of a pace. And by slowing down even a fraction, your brain can catch up and you can think more cogently. But often we don't do that because we think that we have a dead space, you know, like where people are like, oh my God, I have to be speaking. I have to fill dead air. You're not on the radio, right? You're not a disc jockey. You don't have to fill dead air. You can take time. Relax your face. When I tell people how to take good headshots, you say words that end in like yoga and pizza, because it activates a certain group of muscles, the ocularis orbiculi muscles is what they're called. It keeps the eyes relaxed. When you say words like cheese that tighten, it's the zygomatic major muscles, and that seems disingenuous. So as you're talking, you're really trying to have that relaxed expression and settle into it. And again, it's something about the posturing. It empowers you. You feel better doing it. And the last thing is just the most obvious, like record a shit ton of content. Keep being in front of the camera because it's going to get easier and easier and easier every time you do it in terms of your delivery. It's not going to be if you're just putting a camera in front of your face. You've got to practice not editing yourself and slowing down. That's the missing equation for a lot of people. They'll be like, oh, I've recorded hundreds of hours of video. I still get nervous. I still hate it. It's because you don't feel in command to make a mistake. and I'm giving you permission to make mistakes. Because even in this webinar here, I could have tons of errors and it could go live. That's great. Whatever I end up editing, I'm going to cut all that stuff out. But if I'm talking right up on myself after having a mistake and not giving myself a time to break and have silence that I can chop out, I'm going to have a difficult time in the edit room. In thinking of even recording things for like TikTok, for example, record all of it in one shot and cut it up later. So I'll say something like, I'm just going to redo this as an example. So here's your on-camera summary. Here's your on-camera summary. Step one. Step one, don't edit yourself. Like, you see what I'm saying? And now it's easy for me then just to chop that stuff out. I don't have to worry about it. But getting comfortable with that is going to make it much easier for you to feel natural on camera. All right. That is it, guys. Shit ton of content. It may not feel like you learned a ton right in the moment, but it's going to stay with you a couple days from now. You're going to be like, oh my God, I have an idea now. But I want to take any questions before we wrap up here and be conscious of your time. Is there anything that you did not feel was covered or you do not feel confident about leaving this webinar?
I just had a question in terms of, like, you know, when you're interviewing people and they're not coming across very natural, to start, do you ask them the same question kind of just in another way so that they kind of tend to answer the question again, but maybe it comes out a little bit more natural second time around, or even do anything like, oh, we forgot to turn the camera on, like hit the record button, even though you already have, like, just to get another take of it, anything like that? Like, how do you deal with that, like with someone that's kind of stiff and obviously scared of the lens? Yeah.
I make sure I'm sitting on access to them and I'm talking to them. So
Okay.
like I get as close to the lens as I can. So I want them looking at me.
Yeah.
And then I don't say a damn thing. I count to 7, at least 7 seconds in my head.
Okay.
Because if I ask you a question and you answer it, and I count to 7 seconds, you're going to keep talking.
Yeah, that makes sense. Right. Yeah. I'm doing it now.
We want to fill the gap, and it's remarkable how it works. But like literally, just be like nod, be engaged with them. 7 seconds. Yeah, just count it out. It's a miracle drug. I swear to God. Yeah, that's a good one though. That's a good question. Thank you.
That's great. First off, Richard, this was phenomenal. Great work. Thank you for doing this for us. So I guess one question about what you just said about don't edit yourself. I couldn't tell if the example you were giving was the do this or the don't do this.
Oh, it was do this, like in the sense of like it's twofold, right? Like if I'm really messing something up and I'm supposed to be delivering, I don't want to stop and break the flow. I want to keep going. So initially, early on, just keep talking through it. Like you don't have to actually take a break and stop. If you're doing stuff where you rehearsed, then you can give yourself some grace. I will do that because I know where I'm going and what I want the edit points to be, knowing that when I start talking, that's when the good take happened. But if I'm breaking it, so everything before that, I'll edit my videos backwards. So the last take I had is the one that I went with and I moved on. That's just how I organize my footage. But what I would recommend to you if you are trying to get more comfortable is to not even do that, is literally just to go through and continue to talk and wait until you have the idea in your head of what you want to say next.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Just on the off chance that it's helpful or anything, when I've done recordings for myself, if I mess up in any way, I agree with do it in one shot, but don't change your bodily position relative to the camera or the lights, so that when you come back to edit it, there's zero kind of disconnect or messiness in that presentation. And what I sometimes try and do is just kind of think back over the past couple of seconds leading up to the mess up and think, is there a natural way that I can do a cut point, you know, in the editing and pick up the flow of what I was saying, so that when I splice it together again, it's going to give me an easy edit. But that whole thing about incorporating some silent pauses, that's just sort of so important, because if you don't provide yourself with those silent pauses when you try to join the edited video back together again, you kind of might not be able to. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, Richard, I just thought that was incredible. So, and the information density of what you've delivered today is a testament to your expertise in this area.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I always wonder, I don't want to like overwhelm people. And then just to piggyback off of that, Duncan, like I'll do a 2-frame dissolve on the audio when I cut things together, so there's no pops. And it's my default transition. So I can do quick, I think it's like Control-Shift-T is the hot button for that in Premiere, and or what I've set it to. And so it's very quick for me just to be like, hey, I spliced 2 clips together, a 2-frame pause, just a fade, makes it very natural and smooth, and I don't get any weird errors.
That's really useful.
Yeah. Anyone want to workshop or show me what they've got? Like, I feel like we've got some options. Or Stacy, you got a question? Happy to answer that first too. But I feel like Ryan too. Like, if you're near a window, I'd love to. If you can move your situation at all, your camera, to get you like positioned again, so you're like, oh, cool, this is my framing. Or even you, Sarush, too. You're like close to a window.
Actually, in the theater room that I've
Okay.
adapted to.
I'm actually not close to a window at all. I'm just in the hallway. There's a lot of fluorescent lights in here.
Yeah,
I would
never
be.
mind.
This might be hard to answer since you've been doing this for so long, but if someone's getting started and I want to do audio and visual or audio and video together, I want to be able to edit, I want to be able to do all this DIY. What do you think is the sort of most accessible beginner software that's user friendly, but also is going to, make things really nice if I'm on a Mac?
Yeah, I would say this comes up a lot, and I have an unconventional answer. And that is, I think that you should take the time to learn the technology that you're going to be working with, and that technology should scale with your capability. Meaning you can pay for Premiere. I actually think Premiere is a piece of shit. And Adobe I hope they hear this. But DaVinci Resolve is free, and you can get access to it. It is very robust, and it is something that if you learn to do it, you can literally get gigs editing. But the bigger thing is that if you have a prosumer, like consumer grade technology or platform, it's going to be very, very bare bones and restrictive. And once you start to be like, I want to add more things, you start fumbling with learning how. If you use pro grade software, which DaVinci Resolve is, it makes it much easier for you to say, oh, I know how to do this, and there really aren't any barriers to my creative ability. Whatever I can think up, I can kind of do here. And honestly, the learning curve is not that involved. You could spend a couple sessions with an editor to walk through the basics. They have classes on the stuff. Their literature is amazing in terms of how well it's written. And so there's a lot of opportunities for you to learn that. But I would err on the side of going pro, because the non-pro versions don't actually save you any time or money. Does that help answer your question? Are you doing the 7-second thing?
Yeah.
I want to keep talking. And then, yeah, you mentioned too, like camera gear, and I realized I didn't mention that. And honestly, like you can call a place like B&H in New York, or you can call Mike's Camera, and they're gonna sell you, like, just chat with people. They'll tell you what's available. There's new stuff all the time. There might be some things that have perks, but do I recommend like getting a DSLR and doing kind of what I'm doing? Like the devices are really cheap. You can buy a $20 HDMI cable that plugs into your laptop, and you can stream like this using a high-end camera. Again, if you plan on using it more, it's an investment worth making, but cameras turn over so fast, you got to be careful. I've had my Nikon for more than, I've had it for 12 years now. It's a 12-year-old DSLR. It holds up. I got to shoot this weekend on it. I'm going to go shoot 200 photos on it. It's amazing, but I take a lot of photos, and I'm going to be using it, and it's paid for itself. But would I buy like an Alexa, which is like $55,000? No. In 3 years, it's going to be obsolete, and I'm not going to be able to make that money back. So pick what you think is available, and again, investing more on your microphone stuff. But yeah, send me photos or email me, guys, if you want to show me your setup. I would love to see it. I'm happy to make suggestions for things that would make that easier. But again, if there are topics that come up like this, I'm trying to do these once a month because I think it's good for me. It puts me out there. Like, you guys know that I do videos, so like I'm obviously in the market for new clients and stuff. Election years are notoriously bad, and this one's pretty bad. So that's an option of just like me being more visible. But I really want to be focusing more this year on solving specific kind of business challenges for people that are not part of my market, that I don't plan on ever serving, but that still need the help. So I'll put out some polls and stuff about like the next topic. I'm thinking of one for, the 7 essential videos that all business owners should have for their website and social media. I'm also thinking about like, how do you teach technical content using storytelling? Those are the next 2 that I want to do in the next couple of months. So if that appeals to you, great. If you've got other topics where you're like, hey man, please do a session on this because no one's covering it, I would love that information. That would help me a lot.
Awesome. Thank you, Richard. This was great.
Yeah,
awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks,
thank
guys.
you,
I really appreciate it. Yeah, you're very welcome. All right. Well, have a great
Thank you.
weekend, and I will chat with you guys very soon.